Okay. Thanks, William. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is my pleasure to be here, and thanks for William for inviting me. I think we have a very interesting topic that we would like to share with the crowd today, and it really comes down to the fundamental of Lean. And my background also started with Lean in my educational history here. So now let me kind of start with the physical dimension thinking around operational excellence. Most people, when they're thinking about operational excellence or lean, most of them are intended to think within the factory four walls, and they wanted to drive continuous improvement within the factory four walls. Now, in our view, the physical dimension could potentially expand it in two areas. One is industry chain upstream and downstream, and another dimension is the value chain end to end. So I'll try to explain to the crowd today as to what that intentionally mean and how things could evolve with this concept. And then the virtual dimension that William pointed out as well, which is the topic of today, the essence of lean, in my understanding, being continuous improvement. Now, improving what? So what we're thinking is how can we drive bottom line optimization by with the ability to come out with the top line expansion potential. Now, when there is a top line growth potential, could there be a business model disruption? Because in most of the manufacturing mindset, people are trying to build something with a lower cost, with a higher productivity, maximize efficiency, but still in a basic trading environment. So what could be a business model that can be disrupted to allow people moving from different part of the value chain versus staying within the manufacturing part of it? In addition to that, based on the technology evolution as we go, previously we have a lot of things related to digital transformation, which is the combination of operation technology and also information technology. But now with the AI, coming being a lot more available, and with the big data transaction computing capability being available, what we're seeing here is there's a tremendous scale that's being possible to turn things around when we are adding from previously just digital IT and OT. Now with AI coming together, this whole AI OT could transform potentially in a much accelerated fashion. So here's the fundamental basics I would like to explain. There are external challenges and internal challenges, and there are several trends going on. So instead of getting into details, what we are observing today from most of the industries, the current supply is over the actual demand, and which is making the industries not necessarily sustainable enough. So in order to make the industry sustainable, the demand somehow needs to be driving the supply. So what we have defined the way from the lean thinking is by generating, creating new demand and allow the new demand to pull the new supply, and then continuously with the ability to drive and create value. So where does that come from? It makes a lot of sense. People think about, okay, now if you wanted to simply create new demand and pull the new supply, it makes sense. But where does the new demand come from? And what we have defined the new demand comes from problems. The bigger the challenges, the bigger the problems are, the bigger the business opportunities are. So no matter who had the ability to drive continuous improvement with the ability to solve these problems, that's business opportunity. So we have now expanded our capability to not only solve industrial challenges, but also with the ability to solve social and urban challenges. And obviously, if you look at it and think about it, the biggest opportunity that's residing today, one is the upstream of the semicon-based society, and also the upstream of the carbon-based society. So what does that mean? The upstream of the semicon-based society started with energy, and then comes from power distribution, and then comes from AI computing, and then networking, cybersecurity, you name it. So all the semicon that's related to the AI computing, the all the raw materials that's related to power transmission, power distribution, such as copper, all of those things are obviously creating, that's the current challenge and current scaling of the demand. And whoever has got the ability to solve and provide a better solution, who will be able to take a lot better opportunity from these end. And from the carbon-based society, obviously the most upstream comes to food. So how do we address the food availability, food safety, food security issues? That comes down to a very big opportunity. So in general, we have identified certain things that we have access to, and we have expertise with ability to solve these problems. But obviously, with the audience, you are in your business. I'm sure you're touching many different aspects. But again, the bigger the problems are, the bigger the business opportunities are. So that being said, that we in China, being a leading industrial automation company in the world, if we're only driving industrial automation from improving productivity and maximizing efficiency perspective, we are simply adding more supply to something without real demand or not enough of a demand. So it's creating this imbalancing situation. So in order for us to really drive a transformation here, we have re-identified ourselves as a chain leader of industrial services by working with cross-border ecosystem partners, focusing around solving industrial and social problems, as I identified in the previous slide, enabling the world's sustainability. Now, another thing that's driving a demand change, which is the buying behavior change. And then the buying behavior change somewhat related to the per capita GDP. So if you look at the China per capita GDP in 2024 had reached over 13,000 US dollars. And if you look at observing, analyzing across different countries throughout the per capita growth throughout in the history, it's very interesting to see how the buying behavior start to evolve. And when it start to pass 10,000 US dollars, people wanted to end up buying more of the stuff that's customized to their uniqueness versus simply buying something that's high price. So the mass production versus moving into mass customization becoming a trend. So if you look at some of the EV companies now in China, within 3 months, there is no second car with exactly the same specification and design because they are being custom designed and built by the every individual customer's need. So the individual customized requirement goes to a group of people, and then a group of people goes to, okay, the companies need to be able to react to it. But now, if one single company within their own factory four walls, that transformation does not support that holistic customization requirement, then the entire supply chain needs to be optimized. And then moving on to become the industry chain needs to be optimized. So that kind of reflect to my point at the very beginning, the two physical dimensions that go beyond factory four walls. The first one is the industry chain, upstream, downstream, and comes down to because of the per capita GDP growth that's driving the buying behavior evolution. Okay. The next part of that is also very interesting, which is another physical dimension beyond factory four walls, is the value chain end to end. Because most people, when they're thinking about lean, it's only within manufacturing. And manufacturing is the toughest money and profit to be made within the entire value chain. So throughout this overall capabilities, how can we help the industries to extend and their capability into a different part, which is higher value add value chain versus staying within manufacturing? So I'm going to give the crowd some examples. So quickly here, we talk about these three things, starting with bottom line optimization. So leveraging AI technology that we have helped many lighthouse factories in the world, especially here in China. And this is the most recent one that was being certified by WEF as the lighthouse factory. And we supported them with two AI use cases. And this is goes to the high-speed railways wheels. So obviously, you can imagine how important the quality of these wheels needs to be to help the not only the smoothness of the ride, but most importantly, the safety of the people. So the first use case is about AI chemical composition ratio recommendation system. So leveraging AI, driving the big data and leveraging the lean continuous improvement concept, we have been able to help them of the overall process design efficiency by 50%. And then the defect rate of components had come down by 33%. And then use case two, the quality big data analysis and closed loop tuning system. By leveraging this AI system and then align with the lean manufacturing concept, we have been able to help them to reduce the quality cost of bad products by 25%. So this is very basic. End up using AIoT, but in the lean concept, driving this kind of improvements, it's possible everywhere. And another example I wanted to leverage is again using AI-based smart water treatment dosing around the chemical dosing process, how we help optimizing by reflecting the actual fresh water quality, incoming quality, and then with the ability with AI, we can do the chemical dosing directly reflecting based on the actual quality of the incoming water. And because of the floating water like river, creeks, and all that, it fluctuates. The water quality fluctuates based on the upstream conditions. It could be a different weather, it could be different kind of situation going on upstream. But for lakes, for reservoir, the quality of the water doesn't really change that fast. So there are some specific scenarios that we have been able to help. Now, quickly by looking at this concept, we have been able to help the improving the chemical dosing by reducing about 20%, but most importantly, the water quality improved by about 50%. So we can control the water quality and then building it a much closer capability. As a result, for us being the consumer of the fresh water, we use it every day. And this really allows us to help improve how people live. So this is what I was referring to as the carbon-based society. We're trying to solve problems related to human. But if this exact same technology we end up using in the chemical plant, that end up showing to help them to grow their top line. So this is the first example I wanted to share. This is the same technology being used as the water treatment, and then on the chemical dosing side. But on the chemical-based process optimization using the same advanced process control, we have been able to control the quality and then the CPK up by 50%. But most importantly, we have been able to help them save about 5 million RMB a year, but with the ability to help them expand their revenue by over $100 million, oh, sorry, 100 million RMB a year. Where does that come from? It comes from a premium quality got rated with a higher price. Before, when the quality fluctuates, they couldn't really justify a higher premium price. Now, if all the quality now being stable at the premium level, they could sell at the premium price to the market. And this is 100 million RMB. Additional revenue comes from the premium quality that's leveraged by this technology. Another thing related to the top line expansion related to globalization of capabilities. So a lot of the manufacturers obviously wanted to expand their capability outside of China today, based on the industry chain reshaping for all the reasons. There now, by us being able to consolidate all the capabilities through digital solutions that we could come up with a way to showcasing through digital twin the entire operation of all these elements in place. So from a globalization perspective, what kind of improvement that we have the ability to show the customers wanted to go global. Now, there are six critical elements that we have been able to support throughout this capability. First of all is compliance. Second is time to market. Third, cost. Fourth, quality. Fifth, delivery. Those are the fundamentals, right? Cost, quality, delivery. But most importantly, labor. So when we think about optimization, industrial automation helps a lot, obviously, around maximizing the uh, the labor usage, right? So meaning making it as an unmanned operation or limiting the people that's required on the shop floor. But now with these capability, we can demonstrate and using lean concept at the very beginning to showcasing how many people that's exactly needed in their future plant and how can we optimize it. And then, for example, if we somehow included a autonomous warehousing solution in the total package, then whatever number of people that's required, labor required in the warehouse would be most likely eliminated. Let's talk about quickly around the business model disruption. So this is a very interesting case that we have been able to win the top 10, digital transformation cases in China by Forbes in 2021. So our customer is the market leading ice cream machine and ice cream production line builder in China. They have roughly 70% of the market share. In China at that time, there were about 2,000 ice cream production lines in the country. So obviously, our customer is a clear market leader. Now, we have been able to help them in every 8 shift hours by connecting all the machines in production line and digitalize uh, every single element of it. That allowed them to beef up their capacity every 8 hours from 150,000 pieces to 300,000 pieces. Then from industrial automation perspective, this is normal. And we also help them to optimize from 30 people per line per 8 hour shift to 3 people. So 90% of the labor reduction. That's also very much doable by automation. But now, when it comes down to changeover time, it used to take them 4 to 6 hours to change from chocolate to strawberry. But now in this case, we have been able to help them to optimize that by this one button flavor change. So from 4 to 6 hours of flavor change to 30 minutes. So now when they start to have this capability, they start to feel like, why are they still selling machines or production lines? So they start to think about they should really become a service provider doing brand labeling, just like TSMC, whatever they do for the semicon business, they do the brand labeling and helping others to build it to produce the ice cream for others. So they start to consolidate building the ice cream manufacturing parts to help many others to help support them. So this really allowed them to take unique advantage over most of the people by providing a higher quality, less food safety concerns because there is no one touching the production line anymore. And then from the flavor change, as I was referring to, because the per capita change, the buying behavior has shifted. So people wanted to have every new flavor, they want to have a faster access to the new flavor. So this is a very interesting new business model, but the fundamental comes from the bottom line optimization, and we help them create a top line expansion, but with the ability to move away from simply a manufacturer of equipment or production line into a service provider, which is more value add. This is another very interesting case I wanted to highlight. This is a gigantic market that in China, obviously, there's a very huge business related to takeout of food, whether that's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, is a gigantic market. for this piece. But in general, if you think about it, they're mostly concerned about the food safety based on your upstream sources. So how can you guarantee the source of your veggies, the meat, is high quality and that you trust that the source is? And at the same time, you come to the midstream, to the restaurant. The biggest bottleneck of the restaurant becomes the chef, because you have to worry about the actual taste of every single plate that comes out. But at the same time, how many sets of lunch or dinner every single chef can produce? So automation becomes a very important element to it, but obviously the very last mile require somebody physically to deliver. But moving down the road, when the autonomous driving becoming available, this is already being piloted in China. Well, that they can be delivered by robots, by autonomous machines. But most importantly, through digital and automation capability, helping the upstream of the food security track and trace capability, and also with the automation food processing machines to minimize the bottleneck uh, of the shaft, but now still guarantee the taste. So these chain can be connected with the ability to solve a lot of the concerns in this area. So when we talk about lean, we talk about continuous improvement, and this is a good example of industry chain upstream, downstream, and also including the value chain by injecting digital capability and also automation. Here's another interesting example. This is a world-leading fast food company that we try to help them on their entire upstream's net zero journey. They're trying to get to a net zero value chain by 2050, and they wanted to reduce 31% of their carbon emission by 2030 versus their 2015 baseline. Now, in order for them to do that, they really have to proactively collaborate with their upstream supply chain. So now what we've been able to help them is to establish a end-to-end um, supply chain digital maturity assessment capabilities. Now, together, that we wanted to make sure there is a standard that we can measure, and when we have a standard, we know what to do to improve. So my point here, there, when we try to disrupt and optimize certain things, we really do need to look at the entire industry chain end to end. This will help a much larger scale of the transformation. And here's another thing related to sustainability. So we also created a climate lighthouse program by collaborating with Shanghai Climate Week. Now, Shanghai Climate Week is one of the most influential climate weeks in the world. But most importantly, when we worked this out, we defined there are four categories related to building, industrial park, manufacturing, and supply chain. And we have added a new element to it being innovation. So out of all these elements, who are the ones that could be certified becoming a lighthouse? That means they have to be lead the journey. And we have identified in 2025 that we have to be able to quantify more than 66 sub-industries coverage in the climate lighthouse program, because this is will be more than 10% of the 666 sub-industries that's defined by United Nations. So out of the 35 companies that we have end up certified by this committee, um, it does represent over 66. So I wanted to point out, by transforming this, there is a greater influence as required, but at the very high level, there is a social responsibility led by the world leading companies, and we try to bring them together and really lead the way to showcasing to the rest of the industry. And we have another 3 minutes left, so I want to spend another couple of minutes on the last three slides. One is, many of you probably have read the Ray Dalio's The Principle. So it's really talking about the changing world order. It's a cycle. It goes up and down. But now, how can we continue focusing around the ones that's on the rise to drive all those elements? right? From innovation to education to stronger culture and so on. So this is something that we intended to help the customers to focus in around the ones that allow them on the rise. And that's why we created the Joint Innovation Center capabilities by partnering with the Taoji Industrial Park with the ability to cover all those things on the rise more holistically. And in conclusion, though, what exactly are we doing? I wanted to share. There are three things that we're doing on the left. Core technology, this is what we have been doing for many years. Operational excellence, now, as I mentioned, this is beyond factory four walls into the industry chain, upstream, downstream, and value chain end to end. More importantly is the cross-border ecosystem. And this is very difficult to leverage for most companies, which we tend to have the DNA to drive the horizontal collaboration. But now, there are four elements that we try to elevate its value. The first of all is the blue ocean creation, which, as I identify, is the new demand generation, creating new demand.
Pascal. Okay, thank
The
you.
second one is the value chain expansion, and then brand upgrade and customer elevation. So pretty much, if you look at out of those four elements, what we try to do is to elevate entire value chain and industry chain throughout the capabilities. But we got to be thinking very differently to enable this change. So it's my pleasure to be here today, spending the 30 minutes with the crowd, and hopefully the content is helpful. And if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. We'll try to get back to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ian.